So welcome everybody. We are excited to host the webinar today to kick off the first challenge. For some of you have been following us for many months as we've worked through the process of getting the logistics in place for the competition. So today we'll talk about the competition and spend some time talking about the different phases as we move forward and some of the support we're going to be providing to the competitors in the competition. We'll start out by talking about the problem. Why is this an important thing for us to be focused on, including the first responder perspective, as well as thinking about the technology. We'll go through the competition. We'll talk about some of the technology gaps, and then we'll go through the eligibility and phases, and then describe the competitor support. These are the folks who will be presenting in the order in which they'll come online to speak. We're not sharing video today. We will during the Q&A at the end. I just wanted folks to have a sense of who is presenting today as we move forward. So I'll be speaking first. I'm Sonny Kirkley, the project director, and work at the IU Crisis Technologies and Innovation Lab. Rhonda Fischler from the lab, our managing director, will share a little bit about the lab just so you know who we are. Kirk McKenzie will be speaking to us on the first responder perspective. Jason Pennington, who's chair of our technology expert panel, will be presenting a little bit about the technology and some of the requirements when we talk about the rules. And then Haley Mulchin as our project manager, will be talking about the portal. We have set up a community portal. So just some disclaimers here and some background information. This project is funded by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology's Public Safety Communication Research Division through a cooperative agreement. And so we are very thankful for their support, and we've modeled a large part of the programming around how PSCR has run prior prize competitions. Disclaimer, we may mention different technologies, capabilities, materials, entities. It's not an endorsement of those entities. It's just we're using them for reference. This competition we're very strongly technology agnostic. So whatever competitors decide they want to do, technologies they want to integrate, we have no preference for how these are done. We're looking for your creativity and determining that, but we do sometimes want to provide examples just to illustrate points or to point you towards things you might consider. But we will never tell you how to develop your product or what things you should integrate in that product, except where we need those things for things such as our judging platform to be able to analyze your data. For instance, they will need certain data standards for those type of things. But overall, we are not endorsing specific approaches or technologies or companies. So who's running this? The overall competition management, the Indiana University Crisis Technologies Innovation Lab. We're supported by several different partners: Resultant, Indiana IoT Labs, Generator, and the R2 Network. Heavy support in terms of managing and implementing the program overall. So we're funded by NIST, PSCR, and we have three primary collaborating organizations, first responder organizations: the Indianapolis Fire Department, Indiana Task Force 1, which is a FEMA search and rescue team, and the City of Bloomington Fire. So I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda. I wanted to start out by just letting you know why is CTIL running this. Who are we and what are we doing, just so you have a little bit of background about the organization. So Rhonda.
All right, hello, hey, and welcome everyone to the first competition. We are super excited to kick off this event. Like Sonny said, I'm Rhonda Fisher. I'm the managing director of the Crisis Technology Innovation Lab, and we're the organization leading the first competition. And there might be some of you who are not familiar with Indiana University. So we're a highly ranked in a wide range of disciplines, from nonprofit management and the Kelly MBAs to our environmental policy and management school, the public affairs, and we also have a highly acclaimed music school. The Crisis Technology Innovation Lab is a partnership. It's between IU's Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering and the university's IT services. It's also called UITS, Pervasive Technology Institute. Our primary investigator for the lab, Dr. David Wild, is a professor at Luddy, and research, leading to practical, efficient, effective, and equitable technologies and solutions to both improve readiness and scale response to crisis and disasters. You may have seen there was a recent UN-backed report on the increasing magnitude and frequency of weather disasters. And the report discusses the enormous inequities happening now, really, and what's ahead, especially if the world exceeds the 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. Because much of this discussion is politically charged, particularly on the coast, there's benefit in IU being in the more, say, neutral flyover zone. So we see value in playing the neutral Switzerland role as we partner with companies, nonprofit organizations, and government from local to federal levels. And through this process, we strive to be highly interdisciplinary. And this competition is an example of bringing many different skills and experiences together with the purpose of saving lives. So we wish you the best in this first competition, and I'll turn it back over to Sunny to continue with the competition overview. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Rhonda. So as mentioned earlier, the funder of this project is the NIST Public Safety Communication Research Group. And if you are not familiar with them, I strongly encourage you to go to their website and look at their materials, prior competitions that they run, current competitions that they run in addition to this one, as well as other resource materials, videos, publications, et cetera, that are available where you can learn more about public safety and things you might consider using or leveraging in terms of your participation in the competition. Really fabulous resources. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Kirk McKenzie. Kirk is esteemed retired first responder and manages his own companies and McKenzie Smart Technologies, and is just a fabulous person for understanding the issues that first responders face and the challenges that technologists have in solving those problems. So Kirk, I'm going to turn to you.
Thank you so much, Sunny, and welcome everyone to the competition. First, I'd like to speak on the scope and scale and benefit of tracking. And so for first responders, and really maybe more important, the 330 million souls in the United States, the end user is a team of first responders and those they're privileged and sworn to serve. So in total, those 330 million souls will make about 240 million calls for service this year and next and the following. So roughly 2/3 of us call 911 each year. And the first question the dispatcher will have is, what is the emergency? And one of the very near top of the list is where. Often the caller is not actually in the location of the emergency. The system requires the caller to paint a location and problem picture with words. Thanks to NIST, PSCR Labs, IU, and others, the industry is beginning to adopt smart community risk reduction and first response measures, and location is certainly a vital component. Daily, first responders face immediately dangerous to life and health emergencies, where travel time to address a hazard and round trip to a safety zone while monitored by an incident commander will prove to be more efficient. When a patient's located and responders need additional rescuers, their location must be known. When a first responder is injured, trapped, or runs out of breathing air, they have little time. And when a mayday is called, the incident commander will activate a rapid intervention team to search for downed personnel. A known location of a fallen comrade will be an enormous benefit. All these use cases are complicated if they're, say, in a below ground confined space operation, or a mid or a high-rise structure involved in fire, an active shooter incident, hurricane, collapse, or other man-made or natural emergency. Sometimes we'll have 2 or more calls at the same location, whether it's a large manufacturing facility or tens of thousands of people gathering at an entertainment venue. Even non-emergency events like smoke detector batteries, non-injury falls, or child locked in a vehicle, the location of our personnel at a minimum will be convenient. At times, it'll be crucial. The industry is certainly progressing from a C2 model, or command and control, to a C4 plus model, which will include computers, cyber physical systems, and digital tools that will enabled by FIRST competitors who provide the important 3-axis location. Sadly, each day, more than 7,500 US citizens perish. Some studies say if we could improve response times by just 1 minute, we could save 10,000 lives each year. Thanks to the FIRST challenge and X-axis location, we're sure to improve that first response ecosystem. And I look forward to seeing how the challenge progresses and the vital work in solving the location piece of the life safety puzzle. Thanks so much. Over to you, Sonny.
Thank you, Kirk. So in this next part here, we'll talk a little bit about the challenge and provide an overview of the challenge. So for this, I want to turn it over to Jason Pennington, who is the Executive Director of the Indiana IoT Lab, and he can tell us a little bit more about the technical challenges we're looking for solving in this competition.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonny. Good afternoon, everyone. As Sonny mentioned, I'm Jason Pennington. I serve as an executive director for an Indiana IoT Lab. We are a nonprofit incubator focused on connected technology. So my background, largely based on sensors, sensing systems, services in the industrial markets. So I was an IU grad, so always happy to be part of an IU program. I also did an engineering degree at Purdue. So throughout 20 years in industry, I've spent a lot of time with sensors, building and designing hardware, connected systems. And as I progressed through my career, really much more of an emphasis on problem solving. So what led us here, Sonny? So our problem, so as you've heard, really from a firsthand account from some of the technical experts we have in Kirk McKenzie, supported strongly by some of the work at the IU Crisis Lab, we have an opportunity here to look at this problem in a way that we couldn't in the past. So situational awareness is crucial to the first responder. Location technology has developed rapidly over the past decade. So now we're starting to see many wireless devices, sensors, other emerging technologies that help create context. And a lot of that context is defined within the Internet of Things. So I might suggest the Internet of Things basically refers to that generic thing, that thing connected to other things and sometimes systems and even the Internet. Today, first responder tech lacks the situational awareness regarding 3D positioning, specifically inside buildings and structures. As Kirk mentioned, a few key words from the fireground, Mayday. So what happens in a Mayday? How can I find you? How can I help save you? Leveraging some of the technology that exists today. So throughout this problem, our successful participants will produce a technology as a goal here that can track our first responders with a goal of less than 1 meter accuracy in all 3 dimensions, specifically with no deployed infrastructure and in a variety of non-ideal environments. So let's talk a little bit more with respect to background and what we mean by that. So our key technical challenges, if you will, consider the evolution of just the classical map. So today, a classical map, it's as much of a piece of art as they are a science for many. So although these classical maps represent a highly effective tool, there still persists a very fundamental flaw in the classical maps, is that they're not very helpful, they're not very useful if you don't actually know where you are. Sonny. So with that, through this evolution, electromechanical navigation systems, connected systems, geospatial innovations, and real-time localization technologies have become really present in a variety of use cases in our daily lives. Today, we may take for granted, how do I get there from where I am? What will it be like on my way there? And once I'm there, how will I know where to go? So, but even with these technology advances that we have today, we've not managed to solve every use case for every customer. So in general, we now can track our friends, our family, our shipments, our belongings. So generally speaking, in case you forgot, the real world is not just a simple two-dimensional map. It's really represented by a physical three-dimensional space. And as we essentially evolve this technology, sometimes, again, we have to step back and think, what would we do without a signal, a map, a connection to something or someone else that essentially reverts back to this classical problem, where am I? And with some of the dialogue with Kirk throughout the planning of this process, we can imagine many first responders actually have a very difficult time in a Mayday situation because they can't actually tell the rescue team where they are. So our mission as part of this challenge, if you will, is to ideate, design, iterate, and deploy a system that helps to determine, visualize, and transmit a first responder's location. We'll strive to do this in real time within dynamic environments that Sunny is going to illustrate a little bit later today, inside and outside of structures made of unknown dimensions and materials, potentially without electricity or connectivity even being present, and certainly without pre-existing knowledge of the deployment location. So to do this, we also want to build a community of like-minded individuals. So certainly a strong appreciation for all those that have logged on today. So by and large, well-rounded, highly motivated group of individuals within our administrative and executive and technical support team, we have a passion for solving this problem, helping you to push boundaries, and really as a community rally around this cause that we think is a wildly important use case. So let's talk a little bit about the competition and phases. So with this, I'll pass it back over to Sunny.
Thank you, Jason. So spent a little bit of time here talking about the competition and phases, but we always refer you back to the rules. The rules document is posted on firstchallenge.com, and that'll be always the source for the master guide for what we're looking for and requiring in the competition. As things may change in the competition, if we need to shift a date or things like that, those will be published in a revised version of the rules. So the competition focus, I think what's really important to establish what we're looking for in the competition. So our goal is for the competitors in this competition to produce marketable prototypes that can demonstrate indoor localization and tracking of first responders with 1 meter accuracy in a variety of buildings and structures without pre-deployed infrastructure. So what do we mean by that? So by marketable prototypes, often you see competitions and a lot of the technologies and work that's being done, it may be a decade or more before that technology is going to be ready for the market. And so what we're pushing for in this competition are for our competitors to look at how are they going to design their systems, make the trade-offs, conduct the integration activities so that the prototypes they develop are robust for first responder use cases. So will they survive being wet in the high heat of a fire? Being, the physicality of many of these missions, so that robustness is going to be important. Are they scalable? We have diversity in first responders. So while, Kirk McKenzie represented as a firefighter, but there are other first response types of missions besides just fighting fires that first responders are conducting in those missions. And so we look for that ability to scale across diverse organizations, diverse missions, diverse communities. And affordability. A solution that no first responder organization can afford is not a good solution because if they can't use it, they can't buy it, they can't use it, it's not going to make that impact. So we're really looking for that robustness, scalability, affordability in the context of trying to solve the competition goals. So highlight of the competition, we have 5 phases in the competition, moving from initial concept papers that are due in March 21st. And the dates here are corresponding dates on the bottom of this slide here. We'll go through an early demonstration prototype for into phase 2. Phase 3 will be a refinement of that prototype. And then we'll down select the teams at that point in time and invite folks out for live field testing. So we'll have 2 live field testing and demonstrations of the capabilities as we get to the latter half of the competition. So the end of the last phase of the competition, we're anticipating occurring the week of October 22nd, 3rd through 27th of 2023. So we're looking at an 18-month period here between phase 1 and phase 5. So for phase 1, let's talk a little bit more about that because that's our current focus, and we'll have a kickoff webinar for each of the future phases. So you can access the rules for the competition off the FRST portal. So firstchallenge.com. There's a direct link here. These presentation materials and the video will be made available afterwards so that you can have access to both of them. So you can get to the rules right there on the front page of the competition website. And we also have the FRST portal, which we'll spend the last part of this session going through that. And there's a link there for phase 1 applications. So you find the rules on the firstchallenge.com website, and you actually submit applications through the portal. So phase 1, what are we looking for in phase 1? So phase 1 is your concept. We realize that a lot of folks are at different stages of development. And so we are not expecting every competitor to have all the answers figured out when they come into the competition. We realize that many of you are at the early points of your project. And so we'll be, as we're going through the judging process, we'll be looking at each submission individually to look for commonalities of what are a strong project. And Jason will talk a little bit more about that review in just a moment. The things that we require for phase 1 are in the rules, but here's a summary. The cover page, where we get your team and your official representative and a brief description of your team. 7-page project description. The assumption there is that that's the meat of your idea and the things that you're going to be doing in your project or how you think you're going to evolve your technology. Realize that a team that progresses all the way through all 5 phases, they may have dramatically changed their approach, their technology by the time they get there. So you're not locked in as you move forward to exactly how you described it in phase 1. Our expectation is you'll grow and learn. So this is your best guess at how you're going to approach this problem at this point in time in this project description. We separated out from the text 2 pages for images. I've seen many examples in the past, having reviewed many proposals, things like that for funding, where people do a lot of fancy work with graphics, and it makes it a messier kind of document. So we separated out the images that you might include with your description into 2 pages of extra space. So 7 pages of text, 2 pages of images. These could be figures, they could be diagrams, anything that you think would help illustrate the points in your project description. Key team members. So we want 2 pages on your key team members. And here we're looking for, convince us that you can do what you said you're going to do, that you have the skills that are needed to compete effectively in the project. With that said, we realize that some teams will have skill gaps. Maybe you're a team of technologists and you don't have the business side. So when you can't think about sort of how you're going to commercialize this or take it beyond the initial concept. So a skill gap you might identify is you're going to need to recruit some additional commercialization help, or vice versa. You might be more, you might have skill gaps on both certain kinds of technologies. You might have some business skills and some technical skills, but there's certain gaps in your technical skills. So point those out. You won't necessarily be penalized if you don't have all the team members in place that you need for a fully formed commercial market-ready prototype by the end of the competition. First responder partner. So we want every team to work with a first responder partner organization. So this partner is not necessarily a full member of your team, but they've agreed to work with your team throughout all 5 phases of the competition, providing advice, guidance, testing, whatever it is that you've decided you need to do with them. So this first responder partner information, a couple of pages describing that relationship. If you don't have that partner in place, you will not be penalized in phase 1. Just describe what you're planning to do with that partner. What do you think is going to be the approach you're going to take with that partner? Again, this is described in the rules, so do read the rules for how this is described there. Additionally, because we're working on forming a community here, we want a public abstract, and we'll be asking for this each phase. And the public abstract is non-proprietary information that your team is willing to share with the larger FIRST community. So in the portal, the FIRST community portal, we will put information out about all the teams that are competing. So this would be a place to put non-proprietary information. And what we're hoping to do is facilitate people knowing about each other, finding each other, maybe collaborating. You might find that first responders see what you've written and they reach out to you because they'd like to work with you. It's other stakeholders that we're bringing into this larger community. So this is your place to kind of reach them, but we do not want you to put anything in there that you consider private or proprietary. This is a public abstract. So how to participate in phase one? You need to register for an account on the FIRST Challenge community portal. So the link is there. You need to review any resource materials. We've linked some resource materials in there, and we'll continue to do so. Download and read the official rules. Submit your entries by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on March 21st. So you log into the portal and there's a link there and you submit your materials there. And then if you have questions, you can always reach us at info@firstchallenge.com. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about the judging for phase one?
Sure. So, okay. So now that Sunny's essentially given an overview of the phase one criteria, we've broken those criteria down across two key categories. So this chart represents that 70% of the criterion for phase one will be really broken down into strategy, technology, methods, and hypothesis that you propose. In other words, how do you intend to solve this problem? So we would always like to refer you back to the official rules. So we've even highlighted where you can find those on the main FIRST Challenge website. So the interpretation, if you want to think about strategy, technology, methods, and hypothesis, is the solution being presented plausible? I think a high degree of importance with this first responder support for your team. Is it usable? And then to some of the language earlier, is there a potential that this solution that's being proposed, can we possibly bring it to market? And do we have a high potential of success as we get towards phases 4 and 5 with an iterative design as we seek to do some live field trials? So the other 30% of our judging criteria will look for project feasibility and the team. So interpretation, if you'd like, the detailed descriptions are broken out in the official rules document. So administratively, have we checked the boxes? Are we on time? Have we met the criteria? Is the team organized? And is there an approach with your concept paper that would essentially allow us to start advancing through successive rounds over time with a solution that we deem will be highly successful in the field?
Thank you, Jason. So we always refer you to the rules for the official description of both the criteria for submission and how these things will be judged. So please do look at that and make sure you understand it and reach out to us if you have questions. So the other phases, just to give you a snapshot of where we're going with the competition. So the initial concept papers are to get you started. So we will award up to 30 teams with some seed funding to help them get started with out of the phase 1 concept papers. And then we move into phase 2. So phase 2, we're looking for you to start demonstrating your systems working. We realize these will be early prototypes. So it's an early demonstration that you'll be submitting materials around that. Again, all these 5 phases are described in the rules already. So there are more details there than we're going to go into in this particular presentation. So that early demonstration gives the judges confidence that you're making progress and you're able to start implementing your designs. One of the things that we will have as part of the phase 2 award is PSCR, the funder of the competition, has an annual conference, which is the week of January 7th, I believe. There will be prize money for those competitors who win money in phase 2 to also travel to that conference. So there's additional funds in addition to team cash prize for travel funds. We think it's an important conference. We will have some programming there. It's not required programming. It's just additional things that will be going on, but it's a great place to go engage with the stakeholder community. So that early demonstration submission will include not only team prize money and prize money for your first responder partner, but also travel funds. Phases 3, we look at refining our prototype demonstration. And here we're looking for not necessarily a complete system, but a fully formed prototype that we see your system coming together. And at the end of phase 3, in phases 1, 2, and during phase 3, we allow walk-on competitors. So anybody can join the competition at any point up to and including phase 3. If you didn't win prize funds in earlier phases, you can still compete in the next phase. If you don't win prize money out of phase 1, you can still compete in phase 2, and so on. At the end of phase 3, though, we will do a down select. And at that point, we'll down select to 10 teams and then invite them to the live field testing. And then into phase 4, we'll down select to 6 teams for the advanced field testing. So, but we want to encourage a strong community to develop during the first 3 phases. So you may find that, even if you were successful, you still want to team up maybe with another team and maybe merge together to have a stronger team, or you might adopt ideas from each other, or you may absorb technologies from one team to another because that's a better path forward. So that activity where you're reconceptualizing not only your technology, but also how you're teaming, we're hoping that will happen, and it will be strongly encouraged, so that by the time we get when we move from phase 1 and we get to the final 2 field tests, your team might look significantly different than when you started out because of decisions you've made along the way and relationships you've developed. In addition to these 5 main phases, we are going to be announcing a specialized competitions, and we'll be doing a request for information from the community, requesting ideas for things that we should look to fund under those specialized competitions. These will be much smaller prize pool of about $140,000 total, but we'll be looking to support innovations in targeted technologies. So more will come out on that later. So those are additional tracks that competitors will be able to participate in addition to the main competition. And so you can participate in both. You might start out in this main competition and then shift over to one of the specialized competitions, or you might be a walk-on for one or the other. So it's really up to you to decide what makes sense for your team, but it's an additional way to stay involved in the competition, even if your main team is eliminated at the end of phase 3. So prize money. So overall, we have up to $5.6 million in prize funds. We intend to award $5.6 million, but depending on the quality of the submissions we get and the number of submissions we get, that is our target, and our expectation is to award $5.6 million across the 5 phases. The prize will fund at each phase. We include things such as prize for the first responder collaborator. So each phase, starting in phase 2, 3, 4, and 5, your first responder collaborator, if your team wins a prize money, will receive $2,000 of prize funds. There will be travel funds for the PSCR conference, as well as travel funds to help the team come to the field testing for phases 4 and 5. There will be business development and technical assistance funds later in the competition for those finalists. And we also have funds available for stretch goals. So in addition to the main competition, say where we rank 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th place, we'll also have these stretch goals that teams can meet for additional funding. And those will be linked to meeting the goals of the competition, the 1 meter accuracy, things such as that. And again, look to the rules to understand better what those stretch goals are. We call them best in class and BIC, or best in class awards, which are in addition to the main prize money you might win. So I want to talk a little bit about the field testing and the demos. So field testing is going to be at the Muscatatuck Urban Training Center. Here's an aerial view of the site. 190 structures. It used to be an active state facility. It has hospitals, schoolhouses, homes, hotel, power plants, all kinds of structures are available there. It's used exclusively now for defense and first responder training. And so we will be using select locations at the site for field testing in both phases 4 and phase 5. And to give you a sense of some of the different types of locations that are available at the facility. Not saying that any of these are ones that we will use in the competition. We have not yet announced the specific scenarios or the locations of that testing at this point in the competition. So these are just for illustrating the types of facilities that are available at the Muscatatuck Urban Training Center. Fabulous facility. We're really feel privileged to be able to run the competition live field events there as we move forward. Just as a highlight of one of the things we're planning, one of the things we think is really exciting about this is because we have access to such a fabulous facility, we're planning for the teams to spend a work week with us at the facility. So we assume like a typical week would be arriving on site, setting up. You'll have your own private room to set up with a locked door in one of the buildings on site. Tuesday and Wednesday would be live testing, and this is our guess at it until we get the full plans in place. You know, the days may shift a little bit, but this is the initial plan. A couple of days of live field testing where first responder role players are using your technology in these facilities inside the buildings, and we'll be tracking and determining the accuracy and other metrics around the technology you design. But since we're at this facility, we've arranged for the last 2 days of the week to be able to continue to use the facility. So you will be able to do additional tests of your technology. We realize many of you may not have access to such a facility for your own testing and development. So your team can use this time to do additional testing in the buildings on site, participate in some testing scenarios we'll set up that aren't judged. They're just there to help you refine and test out your prototype and improve them. We also are looking to bring in potential partners, customers, investor type folks into these events that will be able to and do some matchmaking to help you move your ideas from prototype stage, conceptual stage into something that actually can be brought to market. So we see that as an important part of the week and time while we have you together. And we'll have some technology experts available who can help consult with you about technology experts and first responders who can work with your teams to improve your products. So we think these final 2 field tests can be really important pivot points for really accelerating your products in addition to just testing you. So how do you become a contester here? So the contestants are open to individuals, teams, established companies, entrepreneurs, university labs, non-federal agencies. So really, pretty broad interpretation here of this. Again, all of this is describing the rules and all the legal language. So you definitely want to read through that and make sure that there aren't any issues. All teams have to have a U.S. citizen or business entity as the official lead to receive prize funds. So we welcome and encourage international participation, but you do have to have a U.S. citizen or business entity as the lead. And basically that's who we disperse the funds to. How your team spends those funds is between the team members. Our issue here is just ensuring that we're distributing the funds to a US-based entity. If you don't have a US-based entity, individual or business into a lead, then you're not eligible to receive funds. You can still participate, you just can't receive funds. Also, each organization, each competitor team must partner with a first responder, a US-based first responder organization. And again, starting in phase 2, we'll receive prize money each phase that the team wins money. And we're going to try to help facilitate teaming. Can't guarantee it, but we will try to help teaming as best we can. And so Haley will talk more about that in just a few minutes. So again, prize eligibility, just want to push this a little bit further. You have to have that US-based entity or individual as a lead for your team in order to receive prize funds. So look to the rules for the specifics of that, but it's important if you're an international team that you understand that requirement related to prize funds distribution. Again, once your team receives the funds, it's up to you to decide how you want to disperse those funds or spend those funds. So participation, I mentioned this before, but just to hit it again, we're looking for walk-on opportunities, teams merging, expanding, et cetera, during phases 1 through 3, where there's no elimination until the end of phase 3. So just because you don't win prize money does not mean you cannot continue in this competition. We're hoping to create a community and hold that community together, whether or not folks have won prize money or not. We're hoping to help you, if you don't win prize money, to understand, how you might reteam or who you might team up with, or how you might improve your technology capabilities for the next phase. And main reason we're down selected into phase 3 is because of limited capacity to handle teams at the live field test. And open to all, whether a competitor or not in the main competition or the specialized competitions, which we'll talk more about in the future. So competitor support. So as we thought about this, and I've been a competitor myself in multiple prize competitions over the years in hackathons, and often you're given a problem, a challenge, and for the most part you're on your own. You have to figure out, understand the space you're working in, where the resources are, even what the questions are you should be asking. And so while we still see that as your primary responsibility, we want to bring stronger support around the teams and being successful. And so we're looking to bring together technology, science, engineering, emergency response, education, training, events like webinars, podcasts, etc. We're also looking to bring technical support and mentoring from professionals from industry, government, academia, first responders. So in addition to offering specific events like a webinar or a podcast, we're also looking to actually facilitate direct mentoring and support from these same kinds of folks with teams. We think it's important, and a requirement is partnering with these first responder organizations that'll make your team stronger. PSER has demonstrated over and over that teams that partner with first responders have a much better product. We want to facilitate teaming where we can, and we will have a strong commercialization support. So later in the competition, we'll start offering direct mentoring and support and training around entrepreneurship and helping you think through what's the best way to bring this prototype from a concept and prototype to an actual marketable product, whether that's forming a company or licensing your technology or some other mechanism that you decide to create. We'll be working with a nonprofit called Generator for that project. In addition, we have the FRST community portal, which is about bringing together a broad stakeholder community. And one of the things I mentioned here, and just to give an example, we talk about this education, marketing, outreach kind of work. And so, we've started partnering with podcasters and trying to reach not only our competitors and serve them, but in our mission to try to more broadly engage the larger stakeholder community to educate first responders around these indoor tracking capabilities, the things that you're developing, sort of preceding the market for introduction of your products as they come out of this competition. So an example of that is we've already been working with the Smart Firefighting podcast and Kirk McKenzie heard from before, and creating some of these educational marketing outreach kinds of materials. So we strongly encourage you to go take a look at those. They're linked on the portal and as well as through our social media. Just an example of some of the things we're trying to do where we are looking to bring that kind of expertise and that insight to bear for the teams and the competitors. So I'm going to turn it over to Haley, and I notice the time is 1:50, and we're planning to go to 2:30 today. We'll have some Q&A at the end after Haley gets through talking about the community, but I want to make sure folks realize that we're not stopping at 2 o'clock. We're going to go until we finish this and go through some live Q&A with folks that are on the call. So Haley, I'm going to turn it over to you. Haley is our project manager for FRST Challenge, And she also, within that role, is managing the portal. And so Haley, you want to tell us a little bit about our community?
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the FRST community. Go to the next slide. So yeah, oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So the FRST community portal is powered by the R2 network, and it's going to basically be your home for everything for the FRST challenge. This is where you're going to collaborate with others in the community, find competition updates and requirements, upload your documents for submission. As a member of the FRST community, you also have access to a resource library, event schedule, and groups to help you find first responder partners and teammates. You also have, it enables our community of competitors, first responders, industry partners, standards and government organizations to interact with each other and share information through learning content and events like webinars and office hours. And then before we jump into the FRST portal, I'm going to briefly talk about the R2 network that I mentioned. And go to the next slide. Go to the next one. So they are, we're going to talk about them just because they are kind of the people that have made this community possible. And so their network is a public innovation network backed by a $1 million federal grant put forth by the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Economic Development Administration, FirstNet Authority, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's created out of a need to face the nation's most pressing response and resiliency challenges. The R2 network will deliver resources, tools, and opportunities to entrepreneurs and first responders to commercialize and deploy new technology. Go ahead to the next one. And so they launched back in 2021, and they are currently rolling out new features every day. I know that they just rolled out one, I think, this past week. And they're going to continue to do that as they engage and expand all the way through 2023. And then they not only have the community portal, but they also have a lot of other features, tools, resources that you might want to participate in or go into the R2 network portal and use.
Haley, I'm going to stop sharing and you can share your screen for the demonstration of the portal.
Yes. Okay. Confirm that everybody can see that. Okay. So we're going to jump right into the portal. And so this is kind of what it looks like when you first get into it. And it's going to say the R2 portal because the community, the FRST challenge community, is part of this larger R2 portal. To get into it, you can either click here in the community or you can go up here and switch between them. So we'll go in there, which takes us to our dashboard. This is a good spot for checking announcements. This is where, as our admin team is adding updates, you'll see those in this announcements section. There's also a link to get to your phase 1 application. Some events like the kickoff webinar that we're doing right now are highlighted here. Office hours, there's a link there to get to it. You also have a quick links to some learning content. And then you can kind of edit your profile and stuff like that. This is another kind of good area to check every once in a while. This is where you get notifications from people messaging you, things being posted in the forum, stuff like that. And then this is where people are directly messaging you. Those things can also be checked in the messages section, and you can edit your profile here. And so the next kind of big part of the site is the community, because we're trying to build that community. And the first section is this members section. This is where you can see everybody that has joined the FRST community, not the R2 community. This is just people who have gone into that and entered the FRST challenge specific community. And you'll see everybody's information, and you can click on them and see the more info. You can see that some people have said that they're on a team. Some people need teammates. There's also a flag for they need a team, and then if they need a first responder. So if you're really looking for other teammates, you can go in here and private message them, add them in the connection and private message them that way. Then the next section we have is the groups, which is another important section. This is, oh, let me go back. So the groups is where a lot of team matchmaking is where we eventually that happening. We've created 2 groups in there, one that is competitors looking for a team. And so if you don't have a team or you need more teammates, that's a great group to join. And that's kind of looks like this. And once you're in there, you can post and say, give some information about yourself and what you're looking for. Or if you're a team, you can say, we're looking for a developer, or we're looking for someone to help us manage things. There's also one for first responders. And that is where you can go and try to find a first responder partner. And if you are a first responder, definitely join that, because that's where people are going to go and kind of try to find you. Some of the other groups that you can make are, you could make one for your team, and then you could use that space to collaborate and share stuff about the challenge. You could create a group as well that doesn't really have anything to do with the competition specifically. It could be a group that's just about location-based tracking, and you could use that to share information and collaborate with other people kind of more broadly about location-based tracking. Since we envision this being not just for the competition, but then also after the competition, kind of a sustainable community around this topic. The next section of the communities is the forum, which is where we have a forum that we've kind of started. We have ones for announcements. You can go in there and see announcements from the admin team. General community forum, you can go in there and post anything that you'd like to start a forum about. And the kind of the difference too between groups and forum is groups are these smaller, like little clusters, and you can make them private, you can keep them open. Forum is everybody can see it and post and comment on it. So then we also have an events and learning one, and then anything for challenge rules, questions, and clarifications, you can always post those in there. If you don't want to just email us, we can go in there and kind of answer that. And then any feedback on the portal, questions or help, stuff like that, you can post in there as well. Let's go back to the next thing we're going to go to is events, which is right here. So this is where we have posted, probably a lot of you have seen this, the kickoff webinar. This is where we can post events, administrative office hours. And this is not limited to just us as the challenge admin posting things. Anybody can really add an event. So if you have something, of an event that might be relevant for this community or relevant for this competition, you can also go in there and add that event so that people know about it and can attend it. Then the next section we have is the learning section. So this is where we as an admin team have added our office hours calendars. This is where PDFs, web pages, anything related to any kind of like material or content related to the challenge are going to live. So we have the interviews that Kirk McKenzie and Smart Firefighting did are in here, those videos. We also have some just information, web pages and stuff like that Jason has put together for us. We've added all of that. NIST publications that might be relevant, you might want to look at, those are all in there. And then once again, like events, this is if you have content, standards, documents, anything that you think is relevant to the competition or location-based tracking as a topic, you can add that in there as well. And then finally, really important competition part is the application section. So this is where you're going to go to submit your application. You have your little instructions. Next, you have your team information. This is where you add your team name. That public abstract that's part that you can find in the rules document is also going to be in here so that we can share it within the portal with everybody. Your team logo, just more details about your company. You can add social media stuff down there. Then you have where you can invite team members so that you only really need to submit one application through the portal. And this is where you would add your team members. So you want to have one person submitting and then everybody else kind of added as a team member. And then we have where you can actually upload your PDF document. And one thing we do want to say is, and it's in the instructions here a lot, is like, be sure that you also include all of this application information you're typing in here in your actual concept paper. It's not replacing it. You want both. But you want it all in both places, so have it in the paper as well. And then the last is where you can preview your application and then submit it, and then we will see it on our end and we can start reviewing it. I think that's all I wanted to cover for that part. Send it back over to you, Sunny.
Okay, thank you, Haley.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to my, second, let me share my screen. So one of the things, I know there's some folks on the call who are not necessarily perceive themselves as competitors, and that's terrific. As we form this community, one of the reasons we partnered with the R2 network is we're hoping to form this larger community. So as we think about the community that we're forming around, broadly location-based services, and particularly for this competition, indoor tracking, we think there's a lot of opportunity for bringing folks together to engage with each other, share, meet each other, cross-pollinate. And so the competition is the stimulus that's bringing that community together, but we see long-term having a broad group of stakeholders in this site that even continue beyond the competition. But when we think about that, we do have the competition. So one of the things that we're looking for is to bring in to this community partners, mentors, technologists, first responders, standards organizations, government research groups, university research groups, folks who want to see this problem solved or to help the competitors. And so if you are one of those people, or of people like that, please invite them into this community and encourage them to engage with the community in general and also with the competitors. Now, we will be recruiting folks who are doing specialized events like technical office hours and webinars or interviews or podcasts, things like that. But we also want those people in the community in general, creating things. So your organization may already have an event that you're going to be doing that's relevant to this community, to these competitors. Post that as an event and let us know about it. So if you think that this is something that would be of interest to our community, then we want to know about it. So we're trying to make this an open system where if you have resource materials, learning materials, events, etc., you have the ability to reach the people who are on this portal. So we're not filtering through everything. Now we have administrative control of things like making things official first events or first learning materials, but we're opening it up so that you can, as members of the community, share with each other, share with competitors. So if you know folks, please invite them in and ask them to participate. If you have any questions about that or have ideas or things you would like to do to help us, please reach out to us. In addition to joining the portal, send us a note and we're happy to engage in that conversation. We think that, it's important for the competitors to have that broad support as they move forward and to leverage that expertise that you all have. So we're going to open it up for questions and answers, and we'll see what folks might have questions about. So Max, you want to ask us any questions? Now ask the folks responding to Q&A to turn their video on, our presenters.
Yeah, Sunny, at the moment, I think we're caught up as far as questions on the go. Oh, one just came in. Tim asked, should teams with completed or nearly completed products be utilizing phase 1 to showcase the product itself alongside the current development progress, or should they stick strictly to the concept backing the product?
Jason, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that. So as Kirk said in the chat, if you'd like us to turn our cameras on, we need permission. It still locks that out. But so just to rephrase the question, if I have a product and or concept that's near completion, do I need to enter phase 1 and describe my existing product, or do I repurpose my existing platform to align more with the goals of the challenge? Was that the question?
Seems about right.
So I think in intent of this challenge, we would like to see the conceptual papers, even for existing products and platforms, to be aligned with the outcome described in the challenge.
Yeah, so if you have an existing product, then you may describe current functionality as well as where you're taking it next. What are the additional features and functions you may add into that technology? How are you going to evolve that platform? Maybe it's a product that's you're being sold into a different field, and how will you adapt it for first responder use cases, or making it affordable for first responder organizations? It's up to the teams to decide how they're meeting the requirement of the concept paper, but we realize some teams will have products existing, and others will have there'll be rough ideas that they're working on putting together. So we want to accommodate all the different types of folks in our review process.
All right, our next question is from Gary here. Gary asks, given the wide variety of structures at MUTC, do you have a design reference volume in mind?
So we have discussed this wide variety of structures. So as we get closer to the field evaluations in phases 4 and 5, there will be some disclosure in terms of what type of deployment or applications we might be looking for. Until we get through phase 3, you can assume all and any.
And one thing I'll add in there, and Jason, on top of that, is we're not going to design scenarios that aren't authentic to how first responders work and the challenges they face on the job. And so you're not going to have some curveball that's just not relevant to first responder uses. So the scenarios and testing lanes we set up will conform to authentic first responder uses and situations they find themselves in.
Great, thank you, Sunny. The next question here from Andre. What are the best practices for financing developments during the competition, including materials, sensors, and hardware? Is it allowable to use university facilities for development? And is it allowable to recruit sponsors?
Yeah, so I can take that. The teams are independent in how you want to operate. If you want to use specific facilities at a university, that's perfectly applicable and encouraged. There's no restriction here in terms of how you're spending the funds that you have or other resources you bring to bear. Our goal is, the win here for the competition is product on market. At the end of this competition, we have teams that have been funded that are getting close to being able to polish their prototypes up and bring them to market. So whatever it takes to do that, whatever relationships you can build, whatever investors you can secure, sponsors, that's your team's decision. We strongly encourage teams to build a strong foundation. Later in the competition, we will have some of the judging criteria will be the commercial viability of your approach and your team. And there will be specific prize money allocated for commercialization development activities. And so building those relationships early is in my opinion, always going to be a win for the team. And what those look like in those relationships, there's no right answer for that question. Now we are providing prize money. So even there have been some competitions you see sometimes where they do a concept paper and there's no prize money. We realize that developing these solutions, even at the early concept phase, will take some funds. So that's why we've tried to start allocating some prize money, even beginning with phase 1 and a quick move to phase 2, so we can award even additional funds at phase 2 to help you really be able to pay for things that you might need to pay for as you move towards that phase 3 prototype where we do the down select. So we're trying to get funds out as quickly as we possibly can to the teams, realizing that it does take money to do some of these things.
Great, thank you, Sonny. And a similar question here from Tim, who asks, to what degree, if at all, are teams required to disclose existing product development, partnering, and or financial relationships, so long as there are no conflicts of interest as outlined in the eligibility rules?
The only thing that you're required to disclose is what's required in the rules. So if we don't ask for a disclosure, that is completely up to your team to decide how you want to describe it and what you want to reveal. If I were to consider those things, I would look for things like, is this something I want to keep private? Is this something that might strengthen the perception of the strength of my team or the viability of my team or approach? So I think you want to take those things into consideration if you're not sharing, or if you are sharing.
Great. Next is, can you share what level of interest comes from the customer/investment community? And are you encouraging such individuals or agencies to contact teams?
So one of the, I mean, if you look at the, if you talk to first responders and you look at, research or surveys or polling of first responder community and firefighting in particular, this indoor location tracking, they call it the Holy Grail, that this is one of the key issues. If we can solve this issue, it solves so many problems. It solves problems with saving lives when first responders get lost. It helps with what's the word I'm looking for? Location data also starts providing value for things like IoT data, sensor data, other kinds of things that might be in these environments. So as we create smarter environments, we create smarter first response team collaboration, coordination, better instant command systems. So there's broad support and interest in solving the indoor location problem. One of the things that we'll be doing as we move forward through the competition is attempting, we can't guarantee anything, but we're attempting to bring in customers, business partners, folks who are interested in being sales channels, investors, to support and engage with the teams. Some of those will be direct programs that we've put together, such as with Generator, which I mentioned earlier, that we run the whole program. But some of that we hope will happen organically, that we'll have investors coming into the site, into the community, or talking to us, and they'll be looking at what the teams are producing and looking at the publicly disclosed information, which is one of the reasons we have teams creating public abstracts with each phase. We're trying to facilitate that stakeholder engagement and people finding each other, whether we're engaged in that transaction, whether we facilitated that directly or whether it was indirectly because you're part of the community. But we think this is an important component to what we're doing, is helping the teams move beyond just early rough prototypes to really something that's sustainable. And that means partners, investors, financing.
Great. Our next one here is about the first responder partnership. So for first responder partners, are there any requirements that they be paid full-time responders, or are volunteer departments also acceptable? Can more than one partner be leveraged?
So you're not limited in the number of partners. As a competitor myself in prior competitions, I've always had multiple first responder partners filling this role. I found it very valuable to have diversity of opinion, different organizations, the ways they work, things like that. It's not required. We only require one first responder partner. The prize funds in phases 2 through 5, there's $2,000 of prize funds specifically allocated for that first responder. It'll be distributed to the teams, and the teams are responsible for distributing it to that first responder partner. But beyond that, I know teams and in other competitions in the past, I know have also paid other first responders to work with their teams. And in some cases, those first responders may become more than just, that external consulting role. They actually join in and fully participate in the team as a full team member. That's kind of up to your team to decide, and that first responder to decide that relationship. And if there are additional funds provided beyond what the prize money that we're directly allocating for them. As far as the requirements, I would look to the rules for how the first responder partner is described. What we'll be looking for when we're looking at that first responder partner and how you're working with them is, are they engaged enough? If you have very limited interaction with that first responder, maybe if you said, I'm only going to meet with them one time, that's probably not going to be an adequate interaction with them to meet the conditions we're looking for having that authentic, input into your process. We'll also look at will this first responder organization individual be able to provide the necessary expertise that you need? Because again, we're looking to have them there so they help your teams make a product that's really going to work for first responders. So if they're a volunteer, which is not, as best of my understanding, not disallowed by the rules, but please double check that. But the question I would have is that person have a level of expertise and skill that would be able to guide your team in developing an effective product? So not necessarily a requirement of the rules, but from a practicality, is this the right partner for you? Maybe. I don't know the answer, frankly, to that. So you would want to look at things like years of experience, expertise, things like that.
Great. Our next question here is, throughout each phase of the competition, will teams with existing issued U.S. technology patents, specifically for first responder interior location tracking, be given preference if the judges have determined identical approaches to a solution?
There is nothing in the rules that addresses patents and other related types of intellectual property. It's up to each of the teams to ensure they're not infringing upon intellectual property that's owned by other organizations or individuals. So we are not anticipating at this point in time doing patent searches and things like that in terms of the competition. Our goal here is to evaluate what is presented to us in terms of the submissions for each phase of the competition.
Great. And then a follow-up question on that one. If a team commercially launches their first responder interior location tracking product prior to the conclusion of the competition, does that prohibit them from participating in later phases?
Not at all. Any technology is going to continue to evolve. So even if you introduced your product or have a product now on the market, what we're looking for, are you continuing to evolve the product as you move forward in the competition? Are you making a better product? But introducing that product at any point in time, or a first version of that product, there's no issue with that at all. That's what we're wanting. That's why we specifically phrased it as we're looking for market ready prototypes. We're looking for competitors who have a real intent to go beyond early prototyping to building something that will actually impact the market. Our win here as an organization, as a competition, is products reaching market in the near future after the competition ends. And so we're looking for folks to get those products out there as quickly as possible. And if you continue to evolve that product in the context of the competition, that's terrific.
Awesome. Next question here is, what sort of continuity of tracking is required? For example, is it a continuous update, which is desirable but challenging from communications in some of the environments? And then to that end, what assumptions can be made in terms of connectivity or update rate requirements as trade-offs may be needed?
Sure, I can take that one, Sonny. So with respect to a level of latency and connectivity, I'll split that out into two parts. So as we get closer to the field trial, you'll start to see in phases 4 and 5 into the granular rules that there are some expectation for update rates. There are some expectations for not necessarily a prescribed type of connectivity, but you'll start to see example data sets with respect to formatting and or interoperability. There may be some statements with respect to what a data packet may look like in terms of how it would be transmitted. So the short answer is yes, we expect to have some real-time connectivity, some level of real-time connectivity. And there's a broad definition of what we mean by that. Ultimately, it's not to be exclusively a post-processing data analysis.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question is probably also for you as well, Jason. With so many location-based technologies like ESRI, GIS, mobile devices, tools, etc., what is the main issue faced in finding exact locations of the person in need? And a follow-up is if we can know exactly where our Uber or FedEx is, what is preventing emergency response from having such tools?
So I would actually defer that question to Kirk. So I have a lot of ideas and from personal experience of building such products and really underlying some of the slides that I showed. But I'm going to defer that question to Kirk.
Thank you, Jason. And that is a great question. And Esri and Cesium, Team Awareness Kit, formerly Android Tactical Awareness Kit, there's many common operating pictures that can track our signals. And we see that sometimes they're being used for nefarious purposes in the news where people are not knowing they're being tracked. There's two components to this. Why aren't personnel being tracked in the field, first responders, even in 2D? Primarily, we remain in a two-way voice land mobile radio system. While we're moving into a push-to-talk capability with broadband 14, FirstNet enabled devices, we will see first responders carrying more and more jurisdiction issued smart devices with these sort of capabilities, but we're not there yet. And then there's the vertical access. Axie, how far, what floor are we on? How far below grade are we, especially in a infrastructure or signal denied environment? So that's the key point. Looking for meter accuracy, including height above grade, below grade, without signal. And Sunny, I want to clarify, you've mentioned prior about this is, in the end, one wants to be able to visualize this location, but for this competition, that's a separate part that IU is handling rather than the competitors. The competitors are looking to send a signal, right? A JSON or similar type file that that the location is all that is required of the challenge. Is that correct, Sunny?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so there's two parts to that answer, Kirk. On one side, if your team is moving towards a commercial ready product, then you're probably going to have some visualization components as part of your product. And that's terrific. But there are a lot of systems out there that first responders use that could use indoor location data tracking that you could actually provide value into those systems, the mapping systems, other types of things that exist. So from a competition point of view, we're trying to stay laser focused on the problem of, can you give us a precise location, an accurate location in the X, Y, and Z axis, so that whatever system is listening for your data can then use that data to help the first responder visualize. Now, the way that's going to work for us as a competition is that data will be ingested into our judging platform so that we could actually judge and say how accurate you are compared to the ground truth that we have about those locations. So we are judging, what we're trying to avoid are competitors spending 50% of their time on a mapping system or visualization capability and not trying to really solve the difficult problem of location. And so, but the reality is, as a team, you may, and for commercialization purposes, you may decide you need that visualization capability. It's just not the focus of the competition. And Jason, if you have any clarity on that, feel free to jump in.
No, I think collectively you both kind of nailed it.
Great. Next question here is, in the special eligibility requirements section of the project description, quote, individuals currently receiving NIST funding through a grant or cooperative agreement are eligible to compete, but may not utilize the NIST funding for competing in this challenge. Could you elaborate more on what kind of scenario is considered a violation of this rule?
So that's one where we need to individually understand your situation. There's so many nuances in what that answer might be, and we may even need to consult with NIST or NIST legal on that question. While Indiana University is running the project, our funding does originate with the federal government and with NIST. And so we are, conforming to certain legal requirements that we might have. So we would just contact us directly and we can engage in that conversation, or engage with you and the NIST folks in determining if there's an issue with that. But I wouldn't want to speculate broadly, because there's so many nuances on what may or may not be a violation.
Great. Next question here is, can you expand on the weight placed on the infrastructure free and standoff features in the context of the evaluation of the proposed technologies?
Please,
So
Jason.
Yeah, so from a technology point of view, infrastructure free should be interpreted as, we're not going to tell you that when you arrive on site that there may or may not be electricity, there may or may not be a floor plan, there may or may not be Wi-Fi available or cellular signals available. So if, for example, you have a wireless solution that presents a gateway of sorts, you can bring your own backhaul, but we're not giving you a LAN cable, for example, to plug that into and an IP address. So I hope that's a clear enough explanation.
One thing, Jason, I'll elaborate again, and some of what I share relates to the market feasibility of a solution versus specific testing scenarios we may set up in our live field testing. So the way I think about it is sort of the base operation of your system is without pre-deployed infrastructure. You can't assume you know anything or have anything available. What you bring to the scene is what you have. In reality, when you're thinking about a market-ready prototype or a market-ready product, you're going to, many cases, a first responder is going to arrive on scene and have certain things available. So if you think about the end goal of a complete product, then you do want to consider what could we do with certain things if those technologies or capabilities are available. If we have an electronic map, can we work with that electronic map to help us? But we want to make sure the base deployment is that you're not depending on anything to be there as a starting point.
Yeah, and I think loosely, if you the background of where some of those statements came from, as we discuss scenarios with people like Kirk and others on the team, consider, like, the intent of that doesn't mean, hey, we're on site, it's phase 4, we're about ready to do a live demo. We just need to go inside of this structure for 30 minutes and get everything set up, and then we'll be ready to demonstrate our prototype to you. So I think in the spirit of aligning the usability of your team's proposal and platform, aligning that with what a real world deployment would look like, I think the first responder coach and first responder team member, might give you a very good indication of what do they know when they've been dispatched. And that's in many cases about as much as you're going to have to go off of when you arrive to phase 4 and 5.
All right, it looks like this will be our last question. But the question is, has there been any market research into the maximum cost per first responder a department is willing to spend and the percentage of employees per department that will adopt and utilize an indoor location technology?
So we do not have that data, and our intent is not to generate that data. That's a question each team needs to come to their own conclusion on. It's really that gets into business decisions and other kinds of market data. Now, with that said, we will be bringing first responders experts into the competition community. And the hope is through those interactions with those folks that the teams can make their own determinations of what they believe are the right price points for the first responder markets, or the parts of the market that they decide to target. So each team will have to make its own determination there, but we will try to bring resources that help those teams make those determinations. And that will be part of our support during the commercialization development phases of the competition as we get into phase 3, 4, and 5. But it's a really valid and critical question for the teams to make that decision of what they think that answer is. And if we end up running across a report or federal document or some other report, we will make that available as a resource if that data is directly presented by some organization and it seems to be a valid assumptions that they make there. We won't hold that back, but we're as a competition, we're not going to say here are the price points you have to aim at. That'll be part of the business case that you're making in the later phases when there's a business plan component to the submissions.
Great. Well, that's the last of our questions, Sunny, and we're at time here. Are there any closing remarks?
No, I think the last thing I want to say here is you have on the screen here, I kept sharing it throughout the time here because I want to make sure people had it, but please do send us an email if you have questions or engage with us in the portal. The folks who are speaking today are in the portal. You can direct message us directly in the portal. You can send email to info@firstchallenge.com. and we will attempt to answer any other questions you have as we move forward. The other things I want to point out is that we are offering office hours. We'll have them weekly, once or twice a week for the next several weeks as the project gets underway. These are not required sessions. There's no presentation. It's just, it's either me or Jason online answering any questions someone might happen to have. We'll capture critical questions out of those conversations and post them as fact files after each session. So don't feel like you have to attend those because you're going to miss out on something. If anything important is discussed that we think is relevant to other teams, we will share that. They're open, so it's not a private meeting. So any other people might be listening in and probably will be listening in if you are asking questions. But we do offer those as a way to provide direct access to our team to help you address problems you might be having. With that said, I think we're done. I appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.